Now, when I was growing up, passing urine was not always just a simple biological process. Often, young boys would line up along certain paths and stage a bizarre competition of who could throw this liquid waste the farthest and perhaps for the longest time. In more sophisticated quarters, this unusual competition has been given a rather colorful name, a pissing contest. Now, this evening I'm reminded of this infantile instinct because of what we have been treated to this past week by two very learned Kenyans, two professors for that matter, regarding the proposed radical changes at the University of Nairobi. On the one hand is Professor Stephen Kiama, the never-say-die Vice-Chancellor of the university, and on the other, the equally no-nonsense Cabinet Secretary for Education, Professor George Omore Magoha. Now, please understand, professors argue all the time. In fact, in a sense, no one becomes a professor without making a series of what they call cogent arguments about various subjects. But what we've seen this week have neither been arguments nor anything we can call cogent. Instead, the two professors seem to be shouting at each other in public. A very public pissing contest it has been. And the smell is beginning to engulf the whole nation. Now, the whole saga began with the announcement from the university that it was effecting far-reaching changes that included the collapsing of 35 faculties into just 11 and the scrapping of its colleges and schools, among other measures. A few days later, the CS announced that he had frozen the changes pending what he called approval and gazettement by the ministry. But now Professor Kiama also has fired back, saying that the CS has no authority over the decisions of the University Council, vowing to continue with key changes. He added that he was well aware of the rules and the ministry would be notified of the changes on a need-to-know basis. In not so many words, Professor Kiama was telling the fellow professor who heads the ministry to keep off the university's affairs and mind his own business. Ladies and gentlemen, at this stage, it really doesn't matter who is right and who is wrong, even though that is important. Instead, I'm more concerned about the public nature of this display and how much it reveals about the relationship between the Cabinet Secretary and the University of Nairobi, which is supposed to be, if only functionally, under his education docket. I shudder to imagine that this could be the continuation of the very ugly spat between the two gentlemen over the appointment of Professor Kiama early last year. But whatever the case, I'm struggling to understand a few things. Don't these two gentlemen talk on a regular basis? Don't they compare notes and consult? After all, these are not personal jobs they hold. They do both jobs, they hold them on our behalf. How possible is it that the CS for Education did not get wind of such radical changes before they were announced in the media? Is it that out of touch with what happens at the university, or is he just playing for the cameras? On the other hand, is it really possible that Professor Kiama and indeed the University Council did not find it necessary to at least mention to the parent ministry that something this big was afoot? Look, I know there will be legal arguments about how much power, if at all, the CS has over the University Council. But the reality is that this issue is bigger than the university itself. We're all stakeholders in what happens to be the country's premier public university, even if only for the mere fact that it is a public university. In fact, in the last several hours, the University Academic Staff Union has run to the courts on claims that they were not consulted and that the changes will constrict academic freedom, among other impacts. And of course, the courts will have to render their decision on those claims. But at the very least, the case itself is one more worrying sign that something somewhere is not working at UON. All said and done, though, it seems to me that all this may have been averted if the two professors were comparing notes on a regular basis, on our behalf, that is, and making participatory decisions. For now, it is clear that Professor Magoha's decrees from Jogo House won't go very far. Neither will the grandstanding from Professor Kiama and the Council. The pissing contest must stop before the once revered fountain of knowledge is reduced to a stinking wasteland. That is my angle.